Welcome to Brew Cheese, where we brew up the finest of cheese. I'm Micah, and thanks for tuning in. If you're new to our channel, we brew up commander decks on a $50 budget, often with an unexpected twist. Hello and welcome back, brewers. Today's video features an all-new legendary creature that was included as a part of the Quantum Quandrix precon, and you may have already been thinking about building a deck around it. I'm talking about Ruxa, Patient Professor. It's double green and 2 for a 4/4 bear druid. This commander really wants you to play vanilla creatures, that is, creatures that have nothing in their text box that isn't italicized flavor text. Now, if you're wondering about that deck name, then I might be dating myself a bit. Teddy Ruxpin was a mechanical bear toy in the 80s that you stuck a cassette tape into with a story on it, and Teddy would move his mouth to the story. But most commonly, we put heavy metal tapes in him and watched Teddy try to figure that out. Ruxa has 3 abilities, all of which we'll make great use of in this deck. First, anytime Ruxa comes down or swings in, we'll get to grab a vanilla creature out of our graveyard and put it back in our hand for recasting. It's also going to provide a +1/+1 anthem effect to all of your vanilla creatures, which is pretty great, and lastly, and certainly not leastly, you may have creatures you control with no abilities assign their combat damage as though they were not blocked. That last super trample effect, combined with the anthem, tells me that this commander is best used in a go wide strategy. The more creatures you have, the more value the anthem effect generates, and the less we'll care about our blocked creatures not dealing damage to their blockers when we're losing several smaller creatures. That's not to say we're not going to play big creatures though. In fact, every vanilla creature in the deck I handpicked to be ahead of the curve. If the power and toughness added together wasn't higher than double the CMC, mana value, then I didn't include it. We're already playing at a bit of a handicap running vanilla creatures, so there's no reason to play at or behind the curve. There was a pattern that began to unfold as I picked these creatures, and that was lots of green pips and their mana cost, which makes sense since that's one of the costs of playing efficient creatures, is a lack of ability to pay generic mana to cast them. That means 2 things for this deck. 1, that we're running a minimum of sources that produce colorless mana, and 2, it makes a lot of sense to include some green devotion in the deck. Now, some of the nice devotion payoffs like Nyx Lotus and Nykthos, those are definitely out of our price range, but if you already have them in your collection, don't hesitate to throw them in. Now, not every creature in the deck is a vanilla creature. We gotta have those other utility options, and when we're trying to amp up green devotion, it makes sense to use creature-based ramp. We're running the 4 1-mana elves that help with mana generation, because we also have a minor elf synergy happening in the deck. Speaking of, we're also running the card that is 3 Llanowar elves stapled together, Llanowar Tribe. It's a fantastic devotion booster at 3 green pips, and cranks out 3 green mana when tapped. We're also running some other super efficient mana producers, like Whisperer of the Wilds and Leafkin Druid. The Whisperer's ability will be producing 2 a shot easily since our commander itself has 4 power, and we're playing a creature heavy deck, so the Druid should also have no problem. Karametra's Acolyte is a powerhouse in any green Devo deck, this one no exception. Heraldic Banner acts as both an anthem effect and a mana rock, so even though it doesn't add to our devotion count, we'll give it a pass because of its versatility. Speaking of versatility, Drum Hunter is ramp and card draw in one package. True, it produces colorless, but it also gets a pass because of how much value it adds to the deck. For draw, there are a couple of pieces that I'd like to urge you to pick up while they're cheap, especially since card prices are skyrocketing right now. First is Return of the Wildspeaker, which acts as either a source of huge card draw or an overrun effect to help close the game out. And when it comes to overrun effects, you don't want ones that will grant abilities like Trample, because that's going to make your creatures no longer vanilla. We'll cover some more of those in a bit. The next card that's thankfully dipped in price is Lifecrafter's Bestiary. The scry on this is fantastic, and even though you have to pay for the card draw, you should have green mana coming out of your ears without too much trouble. Mouth to Feed has always been budget, but in this deck it really shines. The mouth half creates a 3/3 token, a vanilla token, and the feed half draws us a card for each creature with power 3 or greater. Since our commander has the Anthem effect built in, that means anything with power 2 printed on it is going to qualify. I also recommend Colossal Majesty, since our commander has power 4 on its own, so it's easy to enable. Keeper of Fables is so-so in most decks, but with Ruxa's Super Evasion effect, we can more reliably count on our creatures dealing damage to our opponents, so it's way better in this deck. As always, I'm not going to name off every card in the deck, just the important ones. If you want the rest of the draw package I selected, as well as everything else in the deck, that deck list is in the video description. In a similar vein, I'm not going to go through every one of the vanilla creatures in the deck, since they're not particularly exciting to talk about beyond how ahead of the curve they are, but I included 14 of them in total. That may seem low since this deck is based entirely around vanilla creatures, but we're going to supplement them greatly with tokens. That token production kicks off with Garrick Primal Hunter. His ability to crank out 3/3s every turn is fantastic on its own, considering they'll be 4/4s, but he also has a draw effect on him, and that absolutely devastating ultimate, giving us a 6/6 vanilla worm for every land we have. No matter which ability you're using, he's going to add incredible value turn after turn. Next up is Druidic Satchel. Since the majority of the deck is creatures and land, we'll be able to either ramp or get a free Sapperling pretty reliably, and if we do turn over one of our other cards, the extra life helps our longevity. Whenever we do hit those lands, Rampaging Baloths is there to give us a 4/4 beast for doing so. There's also Verdant Force, which is going to give us a Sapperling on each player's upkeep, racking them up pretty fast. Since all of them are going to be 2/2s, that power is going to add up even faster. Fungal Plots lets us turn some of our graveyard fodder into more vanilla creatures, and also lets us sacrifice some of our Sapperlings in case we need draws or life. Wolverine Riders is pretty close to Verdant Force in effect, giving us a 1/1 vanilla elf on each player's upkeep. But it also gives us life anytime an elf comes down on our board. Curious Herd and Howl of the Night Pack are both capable of flooding our board with tokens, easily swaying things in our favor unless we face a board wipe. And on that topic, we have some protection for our board and our commander. Rep and Vigor regenerates each creature we control, acting as a sort of poor man's heroic intervention. When an opponent does board wipe, you know what's really going to get their goat? If we end up coming out ahead on it. Fresh Meat is going to give us a vanilla 3/3 for every creature we controlled that died this turn, giving us an instant comeback and converting some of our mana dorks and 1/1 tokens into beefy boys. All we have to do is recast our commander and swing for lethal next turn. Snakeskin Veil, Ranger's Guile, and Blossoming Defense all make sure our commander stays untouched. Just be aware that if you do give one of your other creatures hexproof, it's not vanilla that turn. Now back to the creatures. There's a third category of creatures that benefit from our commander aside from castable vanilla creatures and tokens, and that's morphed creatures. They're 2/2s with no abilities when they're face down, and that means that Ruxa gives them all the benefits of our other vanilla creatures. Plus, a lot of them provide really nice bonuses, and surprises when we unmorph them. Take for instance Broodhatch Nantuko and Hooded Hydra. Both are capable of producing a lot of vanilla tokens for us if we use them as a surprise blocker and flip them, or if they are themselves blocked. Plus, the Hydra has the added benefit of being able to cast it with a huge X value from your hand, and while it won't be a vanilla creature, it will be something your opponents will actively avoid killing, including with board wipes, because you'll have an instant board full of 2/2 snakes. For a similar reason, we're running Thelanite Hermit, which is going to give us a small payload of Sapperlings when it's unmorphed, and will bump all of our Sapperlings, making them all 3/3s if our commander is out. Of course, the Anthem effects don't stop there. We're running Miragonda Petroglyphs. You knew it was coming, and frankly, I'm surprised its price didn't jump when Ruxa was previewed. It does bump our opponent's vanilla creatures too, so you have to watch for that, but we should get far more benefit from it than they will. Then we're also running Gaia's Anthem, which adds nicely to our devotion count while being a low-cost Anthem effect. In addition to anthem effects, we have a few overrun style effects, and we've been careful to include ones that don't throw trample in the mix. First up is Klothys' design, which in most decks is not very good because of its lack of trample, but here is an asset. Not only is it going to give all of our creatures a huge power toughness boost, but our commander is also going to allow all of that to get through, easily giving us the win. Similarly, we're also running Predatory Rampage, which gives just +3/+3, but that's often enough to pull off a victory, especially spread out among so many creatures. It's not an overrun, but I also couldn't help but include Aspect of Hydra, a single target Klothys' design, because if you have enough devotion, this can be a one-shot kill on its own. There's only two pieces in our removal suite that I wanted to talk about, because they're both a bane and a blessing. Beast Within and Terastodon both destroy non-creature permanents, making them extremely versatile, but they do give our opponents vanilla 3/3s, which is a bit of a non-bow with the petroglyphs. But the possibility is also there, if you do have petroglyphs, to use them on your own things, converting things like your lands into more tokens if you need board presence more than you need the mana production. Green is very limited on wipes, so we're only running 2, and they both hit only flyers, which suits us fine because our creatures have no abilities anyway, flying included. Sky Reaping is going to hit them all for damage equal to our devotion count, and only costs 2 mana to do so, while Nylea's Intervention allows us to either hit all flyers, or fill our hand full of lands, which is useful if you have Rampaging Balos out, or just want to thin your deck. For lands, there's only a few that I recommend running that aren't forests, because we don't want to water down our forest count too much, but these are the ones that I feel will be worth it. Bonder's Enclave is one of 2 lands that produces colorless in the deck, but is capable of drawing us an additional card when we need it. This is one of those lands that I believe should go in way more of your decks than it is in currently. The other colorless land is Rogue's Passage, which might seem like a strange inclusion because our commander makes our creatures effectively unblockable anyway, but it's not in there for them. It's for situations where you want to be able to swing in with your commander without worrying about it being blocked and killed so that you can use its first ability to recover some of your dead creatures. Or if you want to try and swing in for commander damage with an Aspect of Hydra in hand. Colony Garden is going to give us a token when it enters, which our commander will happily bump up to a 1/2, which is definitely worth the cost of the land entering tapped. Oran Reef the Vastwood is likewise worth the tapped land because of its ability to convert a flood of tokens into a way more menacing flood of tokens, or just to make our weaker vanilla drops more effective. Hashep Oasis doesn't lose us any momentum and has the ability to sacrifice itself for a giant growth effect, considering it is the only desert in the deck. Colony Ambush and Tangled Florahedron aren't lands, at least not on their face side, but they do provide a lot of flexibility for the deck by being either additional removal or ramp respectively. Mosswort Bridge can help us power out one of our 6 or 7 mana cards for a much reduced price, or if nothing else, we can tuck an extra land under it and do some land ramping. Finally, Zoetic Cavern is a morphing land that provides 2 benefits to the deck, being a vanilla creature when we need it to, so it's an extra attacker to help pad out our board, and if it does get blocked, we can just flip it and no harm done. The second possible benefit is you can play it for 3, and then pay 2 to unmorph it, and you've played an extra land that turn. Yeah, it costs you 5 mana to do that, but there are times where it might be worth it. The other 27 lands are all basic forests. Unfortunately, the TCG Player Optimizer, not a sponsor by the way, appears to be on the fritz, but using TCG Player pricing, the price of this deck comes up to $39.17 before shipping, so I'm optimistic you can get it under $50. Thank you for watching, and if you like what we're doing here, subscribe or share this video with a friend, or leave a comment telling us what we missed or what you'd like to see in the future. See you again next video.